I figured it was probably time for me to tell you a little bit about who I am and how I ended up being here as a financial therapist and owner of Mind Money Balance. A question people often ask me is like, did you always know you wanted to be a financial therapist? And the answer is unequivocally no. Not only did I not know I wanted to be a financial therapist, but I also didn't know that financial therapy existed, because up until about 10-ish years ago, financial therapy did not exist. To be clear, behavioral finance and the psychology of money was a thing, but it was mostly used by advertising and marketing firms to help sell things to consumers. Now, about 10-ish years ago, the Financial Therapy Association was founded, and they kind of took that data and said, why don't we give this to the people and actually help people understand that their money and emotions are connected? Hence, the field of financial therapy was more or less born. Backing up, I am a millennial. I was told all the time growing up, just go to college, get a degree, it doesn't really matter, as long as you get a degree, you'll be okay. I internalized that so much so that I got a degree in sociology. As you can imagine, that degree didn't take me super far. After graduating college in 2008, I worked a little bit in the field of marketing. It was not my thing, so I went back and became a waitress. And by became, I mean I went back to. I'd been a server basically from the time I was 16 years old through the age of 24, minus about a year when I was working in marketing. During that time when I went back and was a server, I was trying to figure out what type of job not only I wanted to do, but what type of jobs were available. This was in the midst of the Great Recession, so it wasn't like there were jobs anywhere and everywhere. A lot of my friends who had good jobs right out of graduation had lost them. They'd been laid off, their corporations had downsized, and everyone was kind of coming back home, and we kind of started that boomerang generation of young adults moving out and then moving back in. During that time, I knew I had an interest in mental health. I have lived experience with depression, anxiety, and I'm in recovery from an eating disorder. And I have a strong family history of mental health issues. So I've seen mental health issues up close and personal my entire life. So I had an idea that I wanted to do something with mental health, but with my sociology background, I also had an interest in kind of seeing how communities worked, seeing how people worked and interacted with each other. And at that point in time, I started interning and volunteering places to try and get a feel for what I wanted to do. I ended up applying to a school of social work, thinking that social work would kind of check the box of mental health and community care. And I get a little antsy at times, so it was a really good way for me to kind of scratch the itch if I got antsy in any career. Because as a social worker, you can work in a school, you can work in a healthcare organization, you can do private practice, you can do nonprofit work, you can do fundraising. There's so many different things you can do with a social work degree. It felt like a really good fit. After I finished my social work degree, I went and got a nonprofit job like many social workers do. And in that nonprofit job, I got my first paycheck and was making less money than I was as a server. And I don't say this to be like, oh, poor me. I say this to say this is the reality of a lot of these helping and healing professions. Think about nurses, think about teachers, think about social workers. A lot of us are chronically underpaid and are kind of told, look, that's the path you chose. You knew there wasn't going to be money in it. You do this because you love it, not because there's money attached. I come from a financially privileged background in that I didn't have college debt. So when I graduated with my master's degree and started working at this job, even though I didn't have debt, I also didn't have like a mountain of savings that I was living off of. So very quickly, I found myself in this paycheck to paycheck cycle. I also want to acknowledge the privilege that I had, that was really the first time I had been in that paycheck to paycheck cycle. As anybody who's been in that situation knows, or as anybody who has watched somebody in that situation knows, it is incredibly stressful to be fearful about whether or not you're going to have enough money in your account, whether or not you're going to be able to pay your rent, whether or not you're going to be able to afford groceries. I couldn't even think beyond just meeting my means. I couldn't think to fun things, right? I couldn't think to do things that were relaxing or enjoyable. Now, as time went on, what happened was not only were my finances kind of crunched, but also my mental health really started to be impacted. The combination of working a high stress job and it being low paying was not great for how I was functioning. I had, as I mentioned, depression and anxiety that had previously been really well managed. And all of a sudden, that didn't seem to be the case. My depression symptoms and my anxiety symptoms were really, really flaring. My sleep, which had previously been Rock solid was basically non-existent. I developed chronic insomnia and I was sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night. And as anybody can imagine, if you're not sleeping well and your mental health is not doing well, your body also starts not being able to function. I was subject all the time to colds and flus. I felt like I was constantly fighting some sort of immune battle. I'd also been raised with this ethos of working hard, getting scrappy, and figuring it out. I did whatever I thought I could do, which was figure out more about money. How can I make this money stretch? How can I get out of survival mode? So I went to the library. This was before like podcasts were really a thing. And I would check out like armfuls and armfuls of personal finance books, trying to find like the key to feel better about money. And while those books were somewhat helpful, right? I learned a little bit about how to dial down my spending, but to be clear, it wasn't like I was going to the club or going on shopping sprees. I was basically just making ends meet. That said, I did learn how to dial things down just a little bit and, stretch $1 at the grocery store a little bit further. But the other advice just really fell flat. It felt like they were telling me, like, it's your fault you're in this situation. You spend too much. You don't think about your future. It's your fault that you're here. You should have done X, Y, and Z. And I was like, y'all, I did everything I was told. I got good grades. I went to a good school. I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. I did everything I thought I was supposed to do, and I'm still really struggling. I also couldn't do some of the things that a lot of people on the interwebs say, like just go get a side hustle. I was physically and mentally ill, so I could not, after having worked 40 hours a week and not sleeping, go and work a waitressing job on the weekends or pick up a catering gig. Like that just wasn't a possibility. And I think so often in the personal finance space, it's this bootstrapping individualistic grit that doesn't accommodate or acknowledge the systems that we exist in and also our lived experiences. Plus, this was before things like Uber, DoorDash existed, so I also couldn't side hustle in that way. Fast forward a year later, I'm still at the job, still struggling to make ends meet, but like I'm skating by. I am skating by. I'm not getting into debt, but it was not fun by any stretch of the imagination. And I got ready to negotiate a raise. Again, having read all these books about what to do, came in feeling really confident about the work that I'd been doing, the things that I'd volunteered for, the extra things that I'd taken on, getting my notes done on time, all my metrics were good, feeling really confident about making the ask for a raise. And not only was my raise denied, but I was told that I should be thankful for having a job. And to be clear, this is not a knock on this particular place. I think a lot of nonprofits are absolutely struggling to make ends meet, and they cut costs from paying their employers. Again, not their fault. That's the system that we are in. To be extra clear about where I stand, a lot of nonprofits in the US would not exist in other developed countries because the government would actually provide those services. After that, I could feel my heart and my gut just like sink. I knew I couldn't continue, even though I loved the work itself. My body, my brain was screaming at me that I couldn't continue. I found a better paying social work job, and as soon as I started getting that paycheck, like I could feel the stress kind of melting off me, right? I could pay my bills and have a cushion and start doing things like contributing to retirement. As I started doing those things, my body also started to heal itself. My insomnia slowly improved. The depression and anxiety that I had went back to being able to be managed, and my health also started to slowly improve. Did you know that I have a free quiz that you can take to learn more about your unique relationship with money? All you have to do is head to mindmoneybalance.com/quiz to take it and find out. Back to the video. During that time in that other job, I started to really get curious about why is it that we aren't talking to our clients about money? I was doing a lot of depression and anxiety counseling, and my training as a social worker, anytime somebody brought up money to me, was essentially to say to them, let's help you put a band-aid on it. In other words, if you can't pay your electric bill, let's call the electric company and see if they can delay your payment for a month. Or if you're struggling to find food, let's figure out a way to get you to a food kitchen or to a food bank, but not actually talking to them about the ins and outs of money. And I just felt like it was a huge miss that if I'm sitting here with my clients and they're comfortable enough talking to me about their mental health and they're feeling safe enough to be vulnerable with me, and then they bring up money stuff and I'm telling them like, go call someone else, that just didn't feel right. I knew from my lived experience that if they were anything like me and they were trying to cobble together information about financial literacy, they were probably feeling like garbage as well, because they were probably getting messages that it's their fault, that they should have worked harder, they should have saved more, and they shouldn't have been so careless with their money. It was something that just would kind of come and go in waves. I'd be like, man, I really got to do something about this. Oh, there's something here, but what can I do? And I would every so often look like, what can I do with money and as a social worker? Or how do I bridge therapy and money? Knowing that no part of me wanted to be a financial advisor, a certified financial planner. Like, I definitely wanted to stay in the mental health world, but I wanted to incorporate money in a way that allowed me to stay within my scope of practice and within my scope of expertise. Eventually, I found the Center for Financial Social Work and the Financial Therapy Association and went on to get certified in both of those different disciplines. And both of those things allowed me to bring into my therapeutic work information and understanding about why we do what we do with money beyond just budgeting, saving, and spreadsheets. Between 2017 and 2020, I was in a group therapy practice, practicing kind of as a generalist, but mostly specializing in depression and anxiety. And I got those certifications along the way. And in 2020, I went out on my own and really went all in on mind-money balance, where in my clinical work, I can work one-on-one with folks who live in the state of Michigan to help them understand their relationship with money. And then on a broader scale, I can do things like this. I can provide education, information, and understanding that money is nuanced. It is not just about dollars and cents. It's about financial wellness. It's about our money stories. It's about psychology. It's about culture. It's about meaning. It's about backgrounds. It's about identities. It's about so much. And it's so exciting to be able to be here right now talking to you about this. And if anyone is thinking about becoming a financial therapist or has more questions about it, I wrote a super comprehensive blog post on it that I will link below, and you can take a look and see whether or not it might be a good fit for you.